What's up guys, ArchAngel Manga here, and this has been a really long time coming that I just do a normal generalized manga review. I can't even remember the last time I did an actual manga review, obviously before Tezuka season, because all of my manga reviews since the start of that have obviously been Tezuka manga, but this is technically kind of also a Tezuka influenced manga. Here we have Naoki Urasawa's Pluto. This is basically a collaboration between the two authors, obviously between Naoki Urasawa and the late Osamu Tezuka. Naoki Urasawa went to Tezuka Productions. I think he spoke to or asked permission to his own interpretation on a really famous Astro Boy story called The Greatest Robot in History. So he got permission to do that, and basically this is his interpretation of that story. But something that is very typical of Naoki Urasawa work is that he manages to masterfully place thriller and suspenseful subcurrents placed throughout the entirety of the work itself. So before I talk about the story and what it concerns itself with, one thing I want to mention is that this is a seinen manga, a contemporary seinen manga, which adapts a 1950s to 1960s shonen manga. So I mean, I haven't read the original, story, The Greatest Robot in History from Astro Boy. Hopefully the Dark Horse Omnibus will rectify that, shortly. But I really don't have anything to compare this to other than Naoki Urasawa's other works that I've read, because this is the third work that I've read by him now, and I can definitely say I really can't rank this with Monster and 20th Century Boys. They're all fantastic works, and I just don't know which one would be number one, which one would be number two, and which one would be number three, because they're all fantastic in their own right. But yeah, as an Astro Boy adaptation, you would expect Astro Boy, or Atom as he's referred to in this manga, to be the central hero, but he's actually not. The main character is actually Gaziked, and he is a Europol investigator. As you can see on the cover of Volume 1 right there, that's Mr. Gaziked right there. And basically the story concerns him as a detective trying to uncover the mysteries behind a string of robot and human murders. Now, what is happening is somebody or something is destroying or murdering the 7 greatest robots on Earth, because this is set in a time after a war, which I will kind of go into a little bit more further in this review. But he is trying to basically uncover these unusual murders that are happening around him. And it begins with the murder of a pacifist, conservative and conservation robot called Mont Blanc. And it's not only the murders of the 7 greatest robots of the world, but it's also how they're murdered and how their bodies are arranged, which kind of links them all together, and kind of creates this mysterious vibe, that there's something deeper going on within the story, and they're not just ruthlessly murdering these robots for no particular reason. But one thing that also really concerns him as well is that he himself is one of the 7 greatest robots in the world, so he himself knows that he's a target, and thus has to prepare accordingly for when he is, essentially assassinated. So not only does he have to try and uncover the murders and find out who's doing it before the other ones are, destroyed, but he also needs to prepare for his, inevitable impending doom, if and when that comes. So it's a really interesting, character model for Gaziked himself, and even though he's a robot, he does show emotion, and these robots that exist in this world are advanced enough to replicate or exhibit their own emotions. Not just emotions that are programmed, or emotions that are expected of them. They do in essence have a soul, or that's something that's incredibly debated in this story, because the robots are so advanced they've become self-sufficient. But yeah, that's kind of like a little bit on the technology of the series. But yeah, the whole story, the whole world that this is set in, it's set in a world after the 39th Central Asian War, and it resembles our world to that extent. That there's a war that goes on between the United States of Thracia, which is basically America and the Persian or the Arab states. And something that is hinted upon throughout the entire story is the way this war began is that the United States of Thracia invaded Persia on suspicion of them harbouring weapons of mass destruction, or in this story's case, basically a robot army that was basically being built to basically conquer the world, presumably. But you know, this story really mirrors events that actually happen in real life. Obviously, the Gulf War and America invading Iraq under the suspicion of you know, Saddam Hussein harbouring weapons of mass destruction when all they really wanted was oil. You know, because that's just how the world works apparently. But yeah, this story really does take on the undertones of real life events, which is something that Osamu Tezuka really liked to input within his work as well. Even though a lot of his works were surrounded within fiction, they were either grounded within reality and just told fictionally, or they were totally fictional tales that mirrored real life events. And that's definitely, I can see now Kurosawa has put that within his work as a testament to also Osamu Tezuka's writing craft. And it's just, I absolutely love it because they're two of my favourite mangakas, and even though they existed in two different timelines and they probably never met, you know, it's just really nice to see. But yeah, it is a fantastic story. There's lots and twists of turns, needless to say, and like I said, Gazikta is the main character, but as a main character, he's not somebody who necessarily develops. He's not, I wouldn't say he's a plot device throughout the entire series to try and uncover what's going on. He's a little bit of both, because he does develop, he does have his own history, and you know, we do find out really shocking things about him as a character as well, and you know, where he's placed in all of this. But also, because he's a detective and we don't really see him get to grow into that, I wouldn't say he's a really great protagonist if I had to compare them to either Dr. Tenma from Monster or Endo Kenji from 20th Century Boys. But he is a good character. I wouldn't sway that. I wouldn't use that to sway away from reading this story. And also Atom, who you would imagine would be the central character. He does play a part in this story, but he's more important within the latter half of the series, and I don't want to explain exactly why or what exactly happens, you know, to the characters. But as you can imagine, there's lots of deaths, you know, lots of twists and turns, and you know, people basically having to step up to the plate to try and also uncover exactly why they're being hunted down, because you know, this really does concern all 7 of the greatest robots on Earth, and we do get to see them all individually struggle and come to terms with the fact that they are being hunted down when, you know, the war has ended, they've settled down, had families, or as you know, in one of the robots' cases, Exelon has basically adopted a lot of war orphans and is basically living with them and looking after them. So they've all got their own lives now, and you know, they're all through with the war. I mean, the scars and the memories of the war will never go away, as is clearly evident, as you see a lot, you know, some characters, some of the children who are clearly, you know, suffering with post-traumatic stress disorder. Like there's one kid in this story called Wasily, who is basically in a catatonic state, and he does actually serve quite an important role for the things that he says. And you know, at first it seems like a little bit of a mystery and you don't know really why he's in that state, but you know, as with you know, typical Naoki Urasawa story writing, we do have these foreshadowings, and he is one of those characters that does have foreshadowing, or you know, gives us a little bit of foreshadowing, you know, for future events. Now, there's not really much to talk about in terms of what I didn't like about this series, as I love the pacing of this series. Even though it's an 8-volume series, the pacing is very good. Naoki Urasawa doesn't try to cram in too much information and too many characters to the point where it just gets bogged down, you know, and it becomes quite you know, convoluted in any way. There's nothing like that. Every single character is relevant. Even the side characters or characters that don't, you know, appear for very long, they do serve to advance the plot and advance, you know, the mystery or make it deeper. But there are a few gripes that I do have with this series. If there's a robot supremacist group, which is basically like the KKK, and you know, for a supremacist group, you know, they actually literally do dress like the KKK with like the hoods and you know, the whole, you know, really you know, aggressive mentality, because they hate robots, and it just seemed a little bit pretentious if I must say. It seemed a little bit too obvious, you know. Yeah, I wish they would have been a little bit more subtle, or Naoki Urasawa would have been a little bit more subtle in his depiction of that supremacist group, because it just seemed a little bit stereotypical. But that's minor. That's really a really minor gripe of the series. Also, one thing is I found I mean, Naoki Urasawa is really good at depicting facial expressions, and is really good at drawing people. But when we do see like actual robots in the series, I mean, obviously there's humanoid robots, things like that do exist, but because they do look like people, you kind of, you don't really see them as robots. But there are actual kind of robots in the series, and like kind of mobile suits. And I did find Naoki Urasawa's ability to draw robots quite weak, and I did find the robot designs to look a little bit not childish, but a little bit simple and not too realistic for the realistic setting that it's supposed to be in. So they're really my only two gripes about the series: the stereotypical Ku Klux Klan we hate robots group, and the robot designs. Some of the robot designs I really didn't like, especially the titular robot, Pluto himself, which I won't tell you anything about, but that is a very important robot. But overall, fantastic series. Reasons why you would want to pick up this series is, if you like any Naoki Urasawa work, that's fantastic. Pick this up, you will love it. Equally, if you do like an Osamu Tezuka series or a Osamu Tezuka adaptation, something you might be interested in reading, then also pick this up. Obviously, if you like suspense thrillers and a really deep, meaningful plots with really, really interesting, vibrant characters, then again, pick up this series. It offers everything essentially. There's a little bit of comedy here and there with Atom's sister Uran, who we can see on the cover of Volume 3. She's a really, really interesting character. Probably one of my favourite characters of the series, who I haven't probably talked about enough in this review, but just go and read it. So yeah, that's my review of Pluto by Naoki Urasawa. If you do want to read this manga, I do urge you to go out and buy it, as it's still in print, it's still available. And if you want to support me by doing that, then I will leave my Book Depository affiliate link in the description below. That's basically a link that you can click on to go to the Book Depository site, buy the manga there, cheap. You can basically buy it in any, use that site in any country because it's free worldwide shipping, and I get commission off of every sale made from that, so that's pretty cool. It's a win-win situation. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in a bit.